Distinguished viewers, once again, you're welcome to another discussion segment on this program, Development Focus with Jide Ojo. And my net has caught another big fish in the ocean. He's a security and conflict expert. I will let him talk more about his new assignment, which has taken him out of Nigeria. Now he's going to be working for a regional security organization. Dr. Wole Ojewale, you're welcome on Development Focus with Jide Ojo.
Thank you so much, my Oga. I'm humbled by your initial introduction.
No, you are not. Don't play on humility here. You just landed a big job. You are now a diasporian in a sense. Tell us where you are heading now in Dakar.
Okay, thank you so much. Of course, I was working with Clean Foundation in Abuja up until December, and we work on the issue of public safety and security. So my new assignment now is taking me to Central Africa, although I'll be working from Dakar. So I'll be looking at transnational organized crime and issues of security with the Institute for Security Studies, which is a Pretoria-based think tank with regional offices in West Africa, East Africa, and the headquarters in South Africa. So I will be looking at issues of corruption, drug trafficking, human trafficking, and then broader issues around transnational organized crime, which I believe has also afflicted Nigeria for a while now, particularly when you look at the influx of criminal elements into Nigeria from our neighboring countries, which I think has not made hasn't helped our country to be safe and secure for our people to live their daily life and then live a normal life and be a citizen in their own country, which I think is something that has affected us. So I'm working from Nigeria actually and try to secure inroad into these other Central African countries.
Okay. You just bagged your Doctor of Philosophy. Congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
That's also a very huge feat. So when people are saying there is a casting down, some are saying there is a lifting up. In 2020, it was an epidemic, global epidemic. Everybody was saying, oh, I want this year to go. But that's the year Wole got his PhD, landed an international job.
Yes.
And I don't know whether you also put in another kid to the whole equation. So now, any congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
I followed you over time, and I see how diligent, how efficient, how professional you are. Run us through your early life. You know, where were you born? What were you doing up to now? Before we delve into issue of organized crime, whether you are now the Jaguar of Nigeria, that help us to stop all of these criminal transborder crimes.
Thank you so much, my Oga. I'm very humbled by all these statements that you're making. So by way of a background, I grew up in a conflict challenge environment, which
now?
is Modakeke Ife.
So you're a conflict man.
So probably that has shaped my experience even within the development sector. I think I've worked on a couple of program interventions and thematic areas, but the one that has really taken so much of my time has been this conflict and security, which I also wrote my PhD on, but in the North Central this time around, which has been the center that has been engulfed over these violent activities for the past 10 years or even over a decade now. So I grew up in Modakeke Ife, like I said, attended primary, secondary school in Modakeke, and all my education has been within the environment. My BSc, Masters, and PhD in OAU as well.
That's Obafemi Awolowo
University, Ile-Ife. So, and then I joined Clean Fund. I joined Center for Public Policy Alternatives in Lagos after my MSc. And thereafter, in less than a year, I joined Clean Foundation, which I believe is an organization that has really defined my career focus for me within the past 6 years. And then moving on to Institute for Security Studies now. I think it's a trajectory of someone who has always been interested in working within a space. And then, like this ISS, I've been reading about their product and the quality of the work they are doing, and I think as a young man, I just aspire that I would like to work in this place. And then the beauty of it is that it's also widening my horizon, trying to understand other geography and culture, language, particularly within this Francophone West Africa and Central African countries. And I must say that I'm humbled to be on this program with you because I think probably about a decade or so ago was when I first met you, and I became addicted to your columns in Punch. So I don't take this opportunity for granted.
Well, we give glory to God. Let's now get to serious business. Now, you've told us a bit of your background and your work experience. Well, this is not a job interview per se. This is just to let our viewers know the high caliber you possess, and the fact that this country needs someone like you to navigate our national challenge with security at this point in time. Now, you're an insider outside, if I can say that. How much serious is transborder crime in Nigeria?
I think it is as serious as any other challenge that is afflicting Nigeria, which I think if you look on the scale of maybe priority now, you are going to be looking at economic indicators which are affecting Nigeria negatively. You are also going to be looking at maybe COVID-19, which is a global pandemic. But why I said is a very serious issue is that if you look at for the past 15 years now, or let's say for the past 10 years, Nigeria has been challenged with issues of insurgency, issues of militancy in the south, and then a more recent one which has to do with issues of violent action on the part of our local communities, which is popularly tagged as farmer herders. If you look at the complexity of these challenges, there's none of them that is not tied to border challenge. If you look at Boko Haram in the northeast, look at how they are perpetrating evil across Cameroon, Chad, Niger, Nigeria border. In fact, they strike probably in Nigeria now and run to Niger. They strike in Niger, run to Nigeria. So it's a border crisis. And then you look at militancy challenges that we have in the south. It's a maritime border crisis. How oil is being, the oil theft, the vandalization that is going on in the place. It's also a border challenge. And then you now look at a more pressing one, which I believe has set the entire Northwest on a very serious trajectory or dilemma. Zamfara, Sokoto, Kebbi, you see how governors have become so disempowered that they need to be negotiating with criminals. That is just a word. And then these are occasioned by the porosity of our borders. There are credible, intelligent reports that have shown that the people that are wreaking this havoc, majority of them are even non-Nigerians. But because of the identity crisis that has plagued Nigeria, in a situation whereby it is easier for somebody who is a Nigerian or somebody from Mali or Guinea-Conakry or whatever is coming from, to easily mingle and enter Nigeria. Perhaps as a result of ECOWAS protocol and other things that we have taken for granted in Nigeria, we have now found ourselves in this situation whereby border security has now occasioned serious violent crime that is making Nigeria ungovernable and very, very unstable for governance.
Oh, I'm really overwhelmed with that analysis, because many of us thought we have a national challenge. We don't consider a transborder crime as a serious issue in Nigeria, which is why I said you need to break it down for us. The issue of small arms and light weapons, the issue of trafficking in drugs, the issue of money laundering, how do all of this tie to the issue of transborder crimes that you are trying to paint for us?
I think everything, because the world is a global village now. So all the issues that you have talked about now, they are aided by the porosity of our borders. And I must say that when we use the word porous border, we must also try to disentangle that. When we say our borders are porous, it's a two-way traffic. One, it is not that our borders are completely unmanned. Although there are vast expanse of lands that are unmanned across our borders. But the critical challenge is that even in places where there are security protocol, corruption has taken a toll in those places. So it's like a story that we read when we were very small about how fortified the Chinese war was in the ancient time, and then it became so impenetrable they can't penetrate into China hundreds of years ago. And then what they did is that they just called the gate man and bribed the person. And then the enemy, he just opened the gate. So that is the challenge that we have across our borders. It is not that our borders are completely unmanned. The challenge is that corruption has also taken a toll across the border. So it is easier for people to hide, whether it is light weapons, they hide them inside cargo products, rice, fabrics, and all those things. And then when you have people that will not do due diligence at the border,
because they have been compromised.
Because they have been compromised. So that compromise is one of the major challenges. The other issue is that just yesterday, a major newspaper article, Punch to be specific, I think about 3 billion naira was the drug that they caught in Kogi State there. So where is it coming from? Where is this also going? There are extensive report that shows how tramadol is being rebranded in Nigeria now, coming through Niger, and then people are consuming that in northern part of the country because of our border porosity. And the issue that you talk about, money laundering as well. I think it was during the time of probably about 3 or 4 years ago when this hype about the fight against corruption was very rare, that about $100 million was found at Kaduna Airport here. That's a route out. People are probably moving money to neighboring countries. It is, in fact, it is easier because of the realization of the existing protocol for somebody to steal money in Nigeria now and carry it in Ghana must go and enter a nearby country. If you have been to the boundaries in Ilela, Sokoto, Axis, is in Niger Republic, all those places, Benin Republic, Axis with Oyo State, because of the transnational nature of the communities that we also have along that line, because, you know, this colonial contraption whereby certain people who have similar culture, similar language have been put in one country, they are put in another country. So it is easier for people to relate without even passport or anything, move from one place to another, and then foment some troubles.
There was a news story that was shocking a few days ago. They said Faisal, son of Minor, that is standing trial for corruption, whose passports, both American and Nigerian passport, had been seized, was able to find, he jumped bail, went through Niger Republic, and is now in U.S. without either Nigeria nor his American passport. How did he do Egbe or I don't know? How did he manage to escape? Both his Nigerian passport and the American passport are with the courts, and they thought that will hold him back. But we are told now that he has landed in U.S.
That is part of the protocol that we're talking about. In fact, just to justify what you are saying, I was privileged to be talking with a law enforcement officer lately, and then on a case that bordered on a criminal issue with another person. And they were saying, oh, the law enforcement that is doing this task is going to collect the passport and all those things. And you know what the officer told me? He said those things are just that the person will enter Ghana now and get a new passport and then continue with his life. So it shows the extent to which compromises here and there. And then the challenge we are facing, the critical issue that needs to be elevated in the conversation is the fact that all this transborder crisis, corruption that we're talking about, you can't fight it as an island. You need multilateral engagement, multilateral support. If you are doing all you can here, and Benin is relaxing the rules, or Niger is not even interested, or Cameroon is not even interested, there's little to how much you can do. So in terms of policy response, what we have seen, and like the example that you cited now, is the fact that there are a lot of compromises here and there. And then it is easier for criminals to capitalize on that and cross the border and move away.
Is it a policy response when Nigeria decides now that they are going to enforce this national identification number registration? What's your take on that as a policy response to this maybe transborder crimes? They want to know the identity of who Nigerians are. Since, because something was very shocking, which the Minister of Interior, Alhaji, he calls Ogbeni Rauf Aregbesola, said that he went to a community in Ogun State. The front of the traditional rulers' house is Nigeria. The backyard is in Benin Republic. So that tells you the challenge of knowing who is actually a Nigerian, who is a Nigerian, who is a Cameroonian, who is a Chadian. And we have the sugar bar case in 1983 or thereabout, where he was exported, he was banished to Chad, and there is a couple of one particular head of state in Nigeria that people said is not even in Nigeria, he's from Chad. I don't know. So what do you think of the national identification number registration which is ongoing now?
Well, I think it has become a ritual. For us, we don't even know where this is going to end, because I am of the view that national identification registration should naturally be something that has been decentralized to local government level. It shouldn't be, because the reason why I said it has become a ritual, I think we have been on this trajectory since the day of SM Afolabi. You are talking about over 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So why, if there is that political will to actually get this done, why is it taking till forever to do this documentation of your citizens? Why can't there be multiple offices across the 774 local government in Nigeria where people can easily walk in and do their name registration? So ordinarily it's supposed to solve the problem, but look at the way we are going about it in the heat of COVID-19 now. There are reports that even people that are working in the center, some of them have even been affected because of the exposure that they've had to these people. So naturally, it is supposed to solve the problem. But you can't really solve the problem until there is a control about how people enter the country. And I'm going to give an example. I don't like citing examples of civilized crime because people will say, don't compare oranges and apple, but I believe there are learnings that can be gleaned from those places. Because when you even talk about regional integration and all these things, you enter Europe and you enter with a Schengen visa in any of these countries that is part of that partnership, and you see the seamlessness with which, once you have entered, say, maybe it is Geneva now, you are crossing to Germany. But the moment you cross to Germany, you pick your bag. Nobody is checking you again. You have been checked in Switzerland. So you have been checked into entire EU by that. Now in Nigeria, and it doesn't matter whether you are going through land border or you are going through the here. That is the same protocol. So what is challenging is the fact that if you say you want to do national identity registration, and it is easier for somebody to come from Niger, for somebody to come from Benin Republic and enter Nigeria, like the case that you just mentioned now.
And now register as a
Nigeria
citizen.
So who is in charge? Who is controlling that? Who will ensure that we are not even registering foreigners in this country properly? Because I have not seen that check. And these are part of the things that I think are very, very important if you want to get the national identification right. But at least let's start from somewhere. What is important now is that NIMS registration must be decentralized and made easier for people at the local government level. And then harmonization of the database. Am I still going to be carrying national identity card? Am I still going to be carrying voters card? Am I still going to be carrying BVN and all these things? Are they going to be synchronized? Because we are living in a technological age whereby this, by just introduction of a chip, so everything is supposed to be integrated. So that is, I think, what is very, very important now. But I've not been impressed by the way the recent, particularly bringing national identity registration in the midst of a pandemic. It has also posed its own challenge.
So what do you think should be our response to this transborder crime? You have painted a very gory, very gloomy picture of how this affects our national life, our economy, our politics, because there are even issues of Nigerians voting in Nigeria that they carry our our voters card. People cited the example in 2019 of even Nigerian governors coming to the campaign of Mr. President in Katsina and all of that. And people are insinuating that these people that carry our PVC, permanent voters card, are we so sure that they are 100% Nigeria? Now, do we need to build border like Donald Trump tried to do in his 4-year tenure as president of US, so that we just build border and but you talked about Chinese
it's an ancient war.
if you build and you don't solve the problem of corruption, the gatekeepers can turn into honeypot. Yes. But let me not be the one to judge. So what is the solution?
Honestly, knowing fully well that we're going to be discussing this morning, one of the ideas that flagged on my mind is that should we even build border? I mean, build a wall, rather, like the Donald Trump proposal. Yeah. But I think the number one thing is that we're having these challenges because of the prevailing incidence of crime, internally and poverty, internally and externally. As long as poverty issues are not properly dealt with in neighboring countries. You know, Nigeria provides the largest market. Nigeria provides a lot of opportunity for people to flow in because of the population and take advantage of the market. So as long, even if you build the wall, as long as you don't get these issues addressed in other countries. I'll give you an instance. We have a micro example in Nigeria. The reason why there is a heavy influx of people into Lagos on a daily basis is because Lagos appears to be the only state that is doing well and offers a greener pasture. Whether you are in Osun, you are in Gombe, you are in Akwa Ibom. The same thing is what Nigeria is to and there's nothing I'm going to do in Chad. I can't dream I want to go and live in Chad, for instance, or Niger Republic or Benin Republic. But it is easier for people in those places to see Nigeria as their own America within the region. So it is, as long as they will not solve their own problem. And that is what you saw during when the president imposed a ban on the land border, on the closing of the land border. You see how Benin was shouting up and down and all those things, because the national livelihood is tied to that. So you need a Nigeria that is going to exert itself, regionally to start with, that is going to determine the rules of engagement for our neighbor. I think we have the diplomatic and every other means to do that. We need to do that in terms of controlling people that come into our country. And then the second thing in addressing that is the fact that you need to strengthen your law enforcement. I'm talking about border security as a whole, immigration, custom, and the police itself. They need to get involved in all these things. And then securing the border. You also need to mainstream this idea of community policing. And in this sense, I'm not talking about it as a philosophy, as the way the police people are talking about it. Community people getting involved in policing their community. So in those border areas, you have them integrated into the custom, into immigration, providing intelligence that these law enforcement institutions can process and act upon. I think it is one of the ways through which we can go about this. And then the big monster, how do you address corruption within all these things? Because as long as corruption is not addressed, criminals will still infiltrate our countries through the border by compromising our security architecture.
Interesting perspective, but time is not our friend on this program, and that will be the size of today's development focus with Jide Ojo. I want to thank Dr. Wole Ojewale for coming on the show. It's been a very exciting 25 minutes or thereabout. We do hope that at some other time, maybe before you relocate to Dakar, maybe we can still have you, because they are still on. We've only concentrated on the north. We've not talked about the militancy and the maritime border security issue of Gulf of Guinea, the piracy and all of that. We are just looking at, and yet it's a national challenge. It's a nationwide challenge. So maybe there will be a part 2 of this program. Thanks much for coming, and that will be the size of our program. You can advertise your product and services on this development focus with Jide Ojo. It comes every Wednesday from 7 a.m. to 9:30 in the morning. Thanks for being thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you around next Wednesday by God's grace. Have a great day.